Hey, everybody. Normally we say, hey, Pete. Let's try that one more time. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Pete.
Oh, that's much better. Well, welcome to the first tutorial video of Geek Speak and Junk. I wanted to take you through how I'm sculpting Professor X, the way he looks in Logan. What I used here, the material I'm using is called epoxy. Make sure you're not getting that confused with epoxy, so it starts with an A. It's a two-part compound that you have to knead together. Very important that you knead it for a long time, especially if you're using a nice big chunk, as I am here. So I think I cut through a little bit, but I'm kneading it for a good about 3 minutes to make sure. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I actually had to start all over. I had the jacket completely sculpted, and I thought it looked pretty good. But I didn't knead it properly, so it just didn't dry, and it was easier to just start all over. So this is the second time that I'm sculpting this. What you just saw me put down, there was a kind of a smoothing solution. It helps make it, well, for one, so it doesn't stick. I don't have a rolling pin, so I'm using a spray paint can right now so I can get a nice even application. And I'm sure anybody who actually knows how to sculpt is cringing right now with all the mistakes that I'm making. I am completely self-taught other than a couple of YouTube videos, so you're going to watch me bumble along and try to figure things out as I go. So if I am making some huge mistakes, just bear with me. That's the whole point. We're going to figure this thing out, and we're going to try and get through it together. So what I'm doing now is just cutting a straight line so that when I do put his jacket on, it's not trying to replicate a straight line with just sculpting it. In the background, you see some of the other custom figures that I've done recently. Up in the top, we've got a Logan as he buries Professor X in the movie. Spoilers, sorry. And that was made from the new Blade Runner figure with Harrison Ford, and I thought the shirt looked really good for that. Behind him, you see a Colossus made from Colossus. I just changed the outfit, and just over his shoulder, you can barely make out a civilian Thor, which was done from a Terminator figure, and I just popped the head off of my movie version Thor and repainted him. Then above the brushes, we see Negasonic Teenage Warhead. She was made from I might be pronouncing this wrong, Nico Minoru Marvel Legends figure. And then below that, you can see a Wolverine. Unfortunately, the Professor X that I'm sculpting right here is not in scale with the Marvel Legends. It's more in scale with the Marvel Select, so it's a 7-inch figure. What I used was the Star Trek Nemesis figure. I felt like it had the best likeness of Patrick Stewart, so it was easier to start from there. And this is actually a project I've been wanting to do about since the movie came out, and he's just been sitting on my shelf in the wheelchair for almost that long. I just, well, and as you can see, I really don't know what I'm doing, so I've been kind of putting it off until I did a couple of more projects in between so that I would start building up my skill a little bit. So if you're watching, what I did was I laid the epoxy on there, the two straight lines forming either side of the jacket. And I really wanted that big billowing feel. In the movie, he's just got this decrepit feeling of nothing quite fits right, and he looks shrunken in his clothing. And if you're noticing, the figure itself has a hunch. So what I did was I literally cut the other figure in half and cut out a wedge so that I can glue it back together with more of a hunch. So that way when he sits there, everything just looks crumpled over. Like you want to be able to smell the osteoporosis on him. So here I'm using some tools, and because I don't know what I'm doing, really what I'm doing is more trial and error. Trying to get some wrinkles in there, so I'm not sure what tool to use, and I've got these little they almost look like dental tools that my fiance Tiffany got for me, and they do a fantastic job of being able to just kind of mold things the way you like them to be. Oh, also rounding out the count, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner that is an X23, and I got that. I wish I came up with the idea myself, but that's actually a Walking Dead Lydia figure, and I saw someone else on Instagram do that, and I thought it was just looked perfect, and she looks great next to the Wolverine. The Wolverine, by the way, what I did was I took the Wolverine with the black suit. I took an Agent Coulson figure from the Marvel Legends 3-pack that was in Amazon. Actually, no, I'm sorry, no, it wasn't an Amazon exclusive. It was the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. exclusive for maybe Toys R Us, I forget. Anyway, I took the Agent Coulson and I sculpted the hair and the beard, and I ripped off the tie and sculpted a different collar, kind of gave him more of a yellowish look for his shirt. And then the claws were safety pins. I cut off the safety pins. I've always liked that metal look. One of the things that drives me crazy is when you buy a Wolverine figure and right out of the box the claws are all misshapen and pointing in 3 different directions, and it's not great. I mean, the one thing that they need to get right is the claws. So I put the metal claws knowing that they're not going to get bent out of shape. Of course, they are real metal pins, so not for children. Please be careful when you're if you're doing this. Don't leave it around where somebody can hurt themselves. With those, I drilled a very, very small hole and stuck it in there with some crazy glue. So what you're seeing here with the wooden tool, I'm trying to smooth things out and kind of blend the edges together. And really, I'm just kind of going back and forth. So you'll see that I'll put something and then I'll kind of take it away and put it back. And it's a lot of just meticulous work. And if I have any flaw when it comes to any kind of action figure customizing, it's that I'm impatient. I always want to jump to the end. I started out as a painter, and I very much enjoy putting the paint down and putting the base coat down. But even with that, I'm just not patient about it. So as you're watching me make tons and tons of mistakes, the one you're probably going to notice is that I don't wait long enough, and I don't spend enough time really trying to get the detail that I should. So I highly recommend that when you're doing this, you don't be like me. You take some time. It's really going to pay off. If you spend an extra hour, you're going to love it for years. It makes so much of a difference. Speaking of time, the epoxy that I'm using, so it's a 2-part air dry compound, and it's when you first knead it together, it's ultra sticky to the point where you can't even put it on something because it sticks to your fingerprints. I'm just showing you my reference material here. So usually what you do is you knead it and you leave it. What I have down is some wax paper so it doesn't stick to everything, and then go wash your hands or something. After about 5-10 minutes, it starts to be much more easily controlled, and it's much more fun to work with. So in the first half an hour or so after that time frame, you've got something you can work with very, very easily. You can cut it off, you can mold it with your fingers, and you can get the general shape of things. You can start to put down some detail if you want. After that, after the first half hour, 45 minutes, going into the next hour, maybe 2 hours, it's a little bit more stiff. So when you are trying to put wrinkles into something that is kind of thin, you're going to have an easier time of it because you're not going to just wreck everything every time you try to move it a little bit. So this is, again, just me going back and forth, and cut out a little bit of time in the video, but we're probably after about the 15-minute mark, give or take, of when I first needed the compound. And So I'm just trying to make it look as real as I can, look wrinkled and decrepit and so forth. You'll see I also took off the head. One of the things that I noticed right away, if you look at the original Star Trek Nemesis figure, the Patrick Stewart, he's standing very erect, he's tall, he's commanding, he is the captain of the Enterprise. And while that might have worked better for X-Men 1 and 2, in this movie we really get the age, we get the feeling of Patrick Stewart being past his prime, significantly past his prime. He can't control himself. He's he's just kind of sad, and so I showed it to Tiffany, and I said, "What's the first problem that you see here?" And she says, "He's not hunching." And she recommended that I pop his head off and then drill the cavity in deeper. So when you look at the comparison photos at the end, one of the things you'll notice is that his head sits much deeper in his shoulders, and that's not just because I built up the around the shoulders with the epoxy. It's because I just wanted him to give that I'm shrinking into my clothes feeling. So that's his head sitting right there. I've already painted the head. As I said, I couldn't wait. I'm fairly impatient when it comes to all of that. And yeah, we're just kind of going back and forth. I really did a rough job on the back. The back I would consider to be unfinished, even now that the figure is completely done and painted. It's meant to be displayed in the chair. So the back I just didn't spend a lot of time on because I figured he's not really a traditional action figure. You know, there's nothing really actiony about him. The most I might do as far as an action pose is I might have him in Wolverine's arms, cradled, so that he's oh, there you can see the head sitting a little bit lower, so that he's, you know, the end when Wolverine's carrying him up, or the middle, I guess I should say, when he's carrying him up the steps, that kind of thing. I might pose him like that. But other than that, you just see him in the chair, all kind of slumped over with X-23 and Wolverine. Again, this is me just trying to smooth out. So what I really recommend, there's amazing things that you can learn on YouTube. There's a million people out there that do it far better than I do and are much better with the detail than I. So yeah, absolutely. Take a look at what you can find on YouTube. What you're going to see here on Geek Speak and Junk is both Tiffany and I, we're self-taught. We go to the YouTube University, and the major point is don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's where all the great things happen. That's where you learn things that you did not expect to learn. Just try it. It's much more important that you do something artistic versus how you do something artistic. So her dioramas started out less than a year ago, and she was just doing these very, very basic brick walls. And that was literally all it was. It was a styrofoam brick wall. And we fast forward to less than a year now, and she has these amazing dioramas that you're going to see some videos of here in the future. And she continues to work on it. Every one is better than the last. And really all she's doing is learning from her mistakes. And every single time we'll be at our desk. Her desk is right behind mine. And we're working and we're bopping out to some music. And it's like, rah! And I hear her get all frustrated. Whoa, babies, what's going on? And she's like, I messed it up. And I look around, and of course, I can't even tell the mistake because it's that good, but it's this little thing. But she learns, and then she doesn't make a mistake like that again. So my mom, she's much more artistic than she gives herself credit for, but she's always afraid to get started. And the thing that I tell her, the most challenging part about any project is kind of a blank canvas, or in this case, an action figure that hasn't been worked on. So it's very, very important to just do it. Don't be afraid. I've got a good friend on Instagram that his skill, I'm amazed at how quickly he's coming along. And when he first started, very rough, just like myself, but he's doing it. And he's doing it constantly. So the most important thing, if you learn nothing else, is just don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't worry that people are going to judge you. Don't worry that you're not going to get it right or that you're not as good as anybody else. Maybe you're not, but anybody who was ever good at anything started off really, really poorly. So it's important that you just do it. So you're doing, you see right now the little black peg that's there. It's about to blow away in a second. Just blew away. That's the peg for the neck. So it's two ball joints, one that sits into the body and one that sits in the head. And what I'm doing right now is I'm heating up the head, because the warmer the plastic is, the easier it is to get it in. I couldn't shove that thing in there just on my own strength. So I heat it up a little bit, and then now I'm taking my Dremel, and there's already, the cavity is deep enough for his head to sit in a nice slumped thing, but because we have that little peg sticking out of the bottom of his neck, that needs a place to go. So I'm kind of looking at the different sizes of there, see how much I have to bore out. And I like this little mini Dremel. I've got the bigger Dremel too, but it doesn't have any different speed settings. This one has about 4 or 5 different speed settings, and they even use it for polishing nails. I think it's the Dremel Mini. And no customizer can be found without a Dremel. It is absolutely one of the most important tools that you're going to need. So I'm just kind of seeing how it fits right there. Nope, still need to drill out a little bit more. And what I like about this Dremel too, one, it's chargeable, so that's handheld. I'm not really tethered to the wall. But two, it's got a light anytime that you have it turned on, so it shines a light right on whatever it is that you're working on. What I'm doing here is, the Dremel melts the plastic sometimes, so it melted around my bit. So I was just taking my other tool to pull that off. Also, one of the things that I think are very important is the lighting. So they're off camera, but I've got one of those daylight lights, daylight lamps. So it really makes things a lot easier to see. I've also got another one of those balloon lamps where it's got the light is covered so it doesn't reflect off of the plastic as much. Those are fantastic. I highly recommend them. In the upper right hand corner, you'll also see kind of a black and gray apparatus. And that is a magnifying glass that I just bought. I haven't really mastered it yet, but it helps you for the painting, especially if you're painting details like the eyes. On him, luckily, his eyes were already pretty well painted, so I didn't have to use that. But one of the problems that people often have is they can't see well enough. So I'm just trying to smooth out. When you start to use this stuff, you'll see that you get these little chips, these little pieces of residue everywhere, and if you're not careful, it'll really ruin the look of your piece. And that's probably the area where I need to get better, where I have the most room for improvement. So make sure that you're taking the time to kind of get rid of some of those things, use that solution. Don't jump ahead to the next portion. Now, I had already sculpted the shirt below. What I'm doing is, I told you that I didn't mix the compound properly. So in fact, I think what I did was I just took one from one of the jars and didn't take the other. So it's a completely unmixed compound, I think. And I'm just trying to get all of that excess off of there, because if it doesn't harden, then that means that it's going to be weaker when I put anything on top of it, or paint can chip off of it that much more easily. The wheelchair that I got, that was a great find. That was part of a set from WWE, I think. Well, I know it was the wrestling. I'm not sure what the line is called. And it came with crutches and a neck brace. And it was just perfectly in scale with the 7-inch figures. And I thought it was just really looked good for Professor Xavier. I originally bought it, I think, before I even saw the movie. And Tiffany, my fiance, she's in a wheelchair, so I wanted to do a custom action figure of Tiffany, and then I just never got around to it. So here we see the finished portion of it. Stay tuned, watch my next video. I'm going to show you where I paint him, and we're going to show you the finished one. So you can see my rough sculpting and how I should have kept going, but that's how we're going to do. We're going to learn together. So thank you so much, and remember, respect your shelf.